Well, one of the key things is we've seen a huge influx in illegal immigration, which walking through here during the night, during the day, the pursuits, everything, the human smuggling they're trying to get to San Antonio, Dallas, wherever. Last year we had 260 pursuits through the county. That's ungodly, especially for this part of the world. But it puts everybody in danger because because we have to go 30 miles to go get groceries. So you're constantly having to look ahead of you, constantly having to look back. It's not that leisure drive that it used to be because you never know when it's going to happen. And with 260 pursuits in the county the last year, that's almost one a day. It's got everybody on edge. People don't even want to go to the grocery store anymore because of it. Year before last, of course, it's all encompassing. Where this really took off with, excuse some of my French, pissing me off, is we had a pursuit. No big deal. We've had them. They happen all the time. Well, he decides he's going to try to cause havoc on the highway so that he doesn't get caught. He hangs out the window and starts shooting at oncoming traffic, which is bad enough. Well, he hit one of the cars. The car he hit happened to be one of my school teachers. I've known her. I worked with her dad for 30 years. I've known her since before she was born. She works at the local school. They hit her car. It became very personal at that moment because I worked with her dad. I've known her since she was a child. I interact with her at the school, read to her kids because she's teaching 5th grade now. But her brother's also one of my deputies. So it became basically a family matter. They took this out on one of my residents. I'm not going to stand for that. So now she won't even drive at night anymore because of what happened. But people don't understand that. Well, if you don't like it, you don't live on the border. No, this is my county, this is my border, this is my country. I should be free to go where I please without having to be constantly on guard because of a pursuit or a group of illegal aliens trying to get me out of my vehicle to take control.
Mm-hmm. So this was a smuggler smuggling a whole bunch of people into
Yeah, he had 6 people in the vehicle. Mm-hmm. And the kid ended up being 17 years old. And we got him, put him in jail. He escaped from the facility we had him in because he claimed he was nuts. We got him back. He's turned 18 since he's been in jail. Now he's in state custody.
So the smuggler himself was a minor?
Mm-hmm. Well, at 17, we consider them adults, but the feds still consider him a minor. But he ended up getting 10 plus years on that whole ordeal.
Was he a Mexican national or?
No, he was a United States citizen.
He was U.S. citizen.
90%, 95% of the people we catch smuggling are United States citizens. Mm-hmm. They're just looking to make a quick buck.
So was it the sheriff's department that was doing the chasing, or was this the Border Patrol?
No, it was a combination of us and Department of Public Safety.
I mean, you mentioned the impact that people are having living here at the border. I mean, does it include people breaking into people's houses?
Houses are being, not so much inside the city limits or up on Fort Clark Springs, but in the rural part of the county. They're breaking into houses, they're breaking into barns, they're stealing side-by-side ATVs, they're stealing guns, whatever they get their hands on.
Mm-hmm. So I sort of know the answer to this, but did things change significantly on January 20th, 2021? Have you seen is that sort of a turning point?
We started seeing the influx just before Biden took office, right? And with every presidential election since God knows when, there's always been an influx during the presidential election because there's always the talk of amnesty, and then just before whoever takes office, depending on what his view is on immigration, if there's going to be a bigger influx or not. But yes, shortly after Biden took office, he started signing paperwork. We started seeing the increase.
Mm-hmm. What degree of increase? I mean, did you have 260 pursuits this past year? How would that compare to, say, 2019 or 2020?
Of course, back then, but 19, say, go back to 1920, even early 21, we had a pursuit. Everybody started converging because we didn't know what was going to happen. And you could hear it in the voice of the deputies on the radio. I'm in a pursuit. Their adrenaline's jacked up. They're screaming on the radio. Now it's become, you can hear them on the radio. I'm in a pursuit. Yeah, we're doing 102 miles an hour. But in that time frame, we went from catching 70, 80 smugglers a year to 169 after Biden took office. We thought, man, we have knocked this out of the park. We are putting a huge dent in their operation. The following year, we did 750. I mean, 3 times. Mm-hmm. And last year, we broke 900. So I don't know what this year is going to bring. But give Governor Abbott this: ever since he took control of Shelby Park, the entries and the smuggling and everything have decreased. So it's just A, where did they go? B, is they getting ready to come back, because we did have a hard winter. We had a huge freeze, which helped kind of slow things down. But now things are starting to warm up. We're starting to see a little more activity, but not near what we had when the feds had control of Shelby Park.
So, I mean, that's another issue that is sort of brewing here, sort of this confrontation between Texas and the federal government. I assume that, Texas's efforts have, as you point out, have been successful in some way. I mean, it sort of indicates that this is a controllable problem if somebody steps up to the plate and is prepared to control it.
Right. And Governor Abbott stepped up to the plate, and he told them, so we're taking control of Shelby Park. They started laying out the barbed wire. They kicked the feds out. And part of that reason that Shelby Park was the hot spot is because all the people knew that they could go there to claim their amnesty and be shipped off. Now that that is shut down, they can't enter through there. They can't get picked up by Border Patrol for the amnesty process. They have to go elsewhere. And it looks like I hate to say it, but it looks like we've made that push, and they're going to Arizona.
Yeah, I saw that there was a big increase in
A
Arizona
huge
and
increase in
California.
Arizona. So what the governor has done, I support him 110% on that, because under the Constitution, Texas, at one time Texas was its own republic. They joined the Union. We already had a government. We already had everything. But part of that promise was that the federal government was going to protect our borders. And at this point in time, they failed to do so. So Governor Abbott took control of the situation, starting to control the border, starting building walls, and brought DPS down. And yes, it took some time. It wasn't an overnight success, but it's working.
Okay, so you mentioned like people were coming to Shelby Park in order to ask for asylum. Why, I mean, if you can do that in Shelby Park, why couldn't they just turn themselves into the Border Patrol at some other point along the border, rather than have the smugglers?
Well, of course, you've got two different factions there. You've got the Mexican government, you've got the cartels, and you've got the federal government. So you got three, Larry, Curly, and Moe there. The Eagle Pass has always been a focal point because of the train yard. I mean, that train runs from Mexico City, and it stays on the main course pretty much straight into Eagle Pass. So they could hop on the train, ride the train into Eagle Pass, come across en masse, and turn themselves in at Shelby Park. And that's been going on for years. But yes, they could. They could go to Laredo. They could go to McAllen. But that's kind of died down because Shelby Park was the focal point. They were all coming there. And so since that's been shut down, yes, I'm sure, I haven't heard, but I'm sure Laredo's going to pick up some foot traffic along with the Rio Grande Valley. But Arizona seems to be the focal point, so everything's being moved that way because the cartels get involved and say, well, we can't take you here, but this is where we're going to take you because we have better success over here. And with the cartels, human smuggling is a renewable resource. I smuggle you today, you get caught, you get sent back, I get to smuggle you again. Where with narcotics, I smuggle the dope gets caught, I lose it forever.
Right.
But with people, just, like that revolving door.
So, have you seen also the impact on the migrants themselves? Do you find that when you do come across people that very often or sometimes that they've been abused, do you come across, we've heard stories, there's one county out here that had found the highest number of dead bodies along the way? That's
Brooks County.
That's
down in the valley.
Okay.
They average probably 100, 120 a year. Traditionally, Kinney County, because of the lay of the terrain, very rarely do we ever find a dead one, a deceased. One, maybe two a year. Last year, I think we found 10. Year before that was 17. So yes, we've seen the increase because of the number of people walking through. You're going to have an increase in the number of deaths.
Very often you find that the people who are being smuggled and trying to elude the Border Patrol are people who have good reason to want to elude them, that they're either criminals, they've got something else that would preclude them from being caught and released.
That's a good question, because a lot of what we catch are Mexican citizens, which aren't qualifying for any type of amnesty.
Okay.
So yes, they want to get away. From time to time, after we catch a smuggling endeavor, I'll run criminal history on those that we caught. And I would say 50% of them have some type of criminal history. A lot of it's not violent. I mean, a lot of it's DWI, theft, narcotics charges, a couple of re-entries after deports. But fortunately, we haven't caught the murderers and the rapists here. Not to say they're not coming through here, but the vast majority, I think, are going elsewhere.
Okay, so the vast majority of the people that you were seeing smuggled through here are Mexican nationals, not?
Right. Well, either they're Mexican, Guatemalan, Honduran, or El Salvadoran. Those are our big four.
Right, but those others can ask for asylum.
Others usually try to ask for asylum. Now, we have caught some Chinese, which sets off some flags. They're from China. Why didn't they apply for asylum? Why didn't they go through the regular routine? Don't know. And we caught a girl from North Korea who, technically, yes, she could have presented herself at the port of entry, but the question is, we still don't know why she was trying to be smuggled. So that's something the feds won't share with us.
One thing I've heard a lot of people talk about, seen a lot of pictures and videos, is the environmental impact of illegal immigration. You see trash scattered everywhere, documents left. Can you talk about some of the environmental impact on your county and along the border?
Well, that's a good part, because I've talked to PETA, I've talked to the environmentalists, and they don't care. The thing is, this is ranch country. We've got people raising sheep, goats, cattle, exotics. Cattle, they're on the food chain for a reason. They're not the brightest animal on the planet. But a steer will pick up an empty bottle or a Dorito bag, whatever's left behind, and chew on it. And sometimes it gets hung in. They'll either suffocate or it'll get in their digestive tract and block it. So now you've lost your cattle. They're coming through and they break water lines. Well, now your cattle don't have water. So it's a constant maintenance issue, and for the ranchers to keep an eye on their animals, what's going on. You lose a steer, or especially if it's a heifer, you're losing your breeding stock. You've just lost $5,000-6,000 right there, and PETA doesn't care. And one of my concerns is, especially during the winter, these illegal aliens will come up, they'll find a water trough, they'll make their camp for the night, they'll eat, they'll build a little fire to stay warm or cook their food or whatever. What happens if that gets out of control? Because right now we're in the middle of a drought. It wouldn't take much to get started grass fire. Now what happens? Yeah, it burns. Cattle got no place to go. They end up getting backed into a corner somewhere trying to get away, and they end up dying. But same thing with your wildlife, your quail, your lizards, your horny toads, whatever the case may be. That pasture's done for a while. I mean, animals have died. PETA doesn't care. The stuff that's being left down at the river, they don't care. I've talked to the environmentalists, everybody I can think of. When we had the Cubans or the Haitians show up under the bridge in Del Rio, 13,000 people, come on. That whole area, all that dirt under there is contaminated. The next rain, where does it go? It goes into the Rio Grande River. The Rio Grande River carries it downstream. Once you get past Eagle Pass, the majority of the valley area depends on the Rio Grande for their food, for their water, and for their crops. So now you've taken all this contaminated soil, put it in the river, what happens? All I heard was crickets. What are you going to do about this? Nothing.
Wow. Can you go a little more into the livelihood of ranchers, how this impacts them? How are they feeling? Are they concerned? Are they really frustrated with
They're
what they're
extremely
dealing
frustrated.
with?
Take you back in time a little bit. Back when I grew up in Del Rio, and when I was in school, Val Verde County, Edwards County, and Kinney County were the major producers of wool and mohair in the state. Texas ruled the world when it came to wool and mohair production. Kinney County, Val Verde County, and Edwards County ruled Texas. So we had a booming economy here. I mean, we had the sheep and goat industry, which was phenomenal. We had, everybody's seen Alamo, everybody's seen Lonesome Dove. That was all filmed here at Alamo Village. We had a huge movie industry. There was over 150 movies made here. We had John Wayne, we had, name them, they were here. In the mid-'80s, the sheep and goat industry kind of died. And soon after that, powers that be over Alamo Village passed away, and that kind of went away. So everybody in this county worked at Alamo Village at one time or another. My wife worked out there for years. She was helped with probably 15, 20, 30 different movies. So everybody here worked there. It was a huge tourist attraction. That shut down. So now we've lost our hunters. I mean, we've lost our sheep and goat industry, and we've lost our movie industry. The next thing that started showing up in the early 90s was the exotic hunters, high fences. We're talking name the animal, aardvark to zebra. If it's it's here in Kinney County, you can hunt it for a price. There's a place here you can hunt Cape Buffalo, $80,000. Huge, huge price, but it brings people into our county. We have one grocery store, one gas station. The hunters is what we depend on now to keep this county afloat. They come in from Houston, they've got property leased year round. The exotic hunters are here year round. They're spending $50,000, $60,000 a weekend to come in, hunt, do whatever, and go home. So it keeps our gas station going, it keeps our restaurants going, and it keeps our grocery store afloat. If I lose the hunters quit coming because of this illegal immigration issue, with hunting camps being torn up, vehicles being stolen, fences being damaged, that puts the exotic hunters out of business, I lose my county. I cannot lose my county. I'll fight to the very bitter end to keep this county afloat best I can. But the hunters, the locals, they're doing a phenomenal job of pulling together and keeping this county together.
Would you say your residents are scared, and do they support what Governor Abbott is doing to stop the flow of illegal immigration?
I'm not going to say they're scared, but they're very cautious. Used to when you could go out, leave the ranch, leave your house open, do whatever, walk around the house at 2 o'clock in the morning, go outside, do whatever. But when you wake up in the morning and go out to the barn to start your tractor, open it up, and there's 10 guys in there charging their phones off your electricity and acting like they deserve, that they're entitled to charge their phones, or if they're getting into your water, or whatever the case may be. So they're a little guarded now. They're a little protective of their stuff. Their backyard just happens to be a little bigger than mine and yours. So they have a right to be defensive. But as far as being scared, no, they're just cautious.
What would you say the most common crimes you see committed by illegal aliens after they cross the border are as they're making their way through the county and the surrounding area?
Well, right now you've got your criminal trespass, of course. Criminal mischief, they're cutting holes in the fence. They're breaking into, if there's nobody there, they break in, they look for food, water, whatever else they can get their hands on. But that's probably the biggest, is that, I would say, burglary of a habitation.
And the 2024 election is coming up. Do you think we'll see an influx in people trying to cross the border out of the fear that President Biden could lose re-election?
I think we're going to see a huge increase. Even back when Reagan was running for president and Bush and Obama, we saw increases. But I think there's going to be something more of a tsunami than anything, because we have presidential elections here, have presidential elections in Mexico at the same time. So we're going to see that. We're going to see that push. It may have all shifted to Arizona, New Mexico, California by then, but we're still going to see some here. But I think the closer we get to the election, the bigger the push is going to be. And election day, if and when Biden's voted out, we're going to see a huge push between that day and Inauguration Day. Excuse me, just to see. I think that's what's going to happen. I hope I'm wrong, but we'll have to sit back and see.
Sure. And have you heard, is Mexico doing anything on its side of the border to stop the flow?
As long as we pay them. Mayorkas and crew went down there to have this powwow, and I'm sure there was some money exchanged, and said, okay, here's the deal. If you'll get them off the train and send them home, we'll pay for it. Mexico's all about that. If what the money that comes in, and the cartel's paying them on one side, we're paying them on the other, and they're sitting in the middle like in the catbird seat.
How has life changed here in Kinney County from before Joe Biden was president and since he became president?
It's night and day. The people here no longer have safety and security of their own homes like they used to. Used to see kids walking down the street playing in the parks. Now, if you drive around town, you won't see people on the streets or in the parks because all these smugglers and the law enforcement chases have been happening since then. As far as my office goes, for prosecutions, we averaged like 5 or 6 cases a month, and that jumped drastically to 400 a month. And to put it in perspective, Kinney County has 3,200 residents, and we've prosecuted over 5,000 cases for criminal trespass. And that's just dealing, I'd say 98% with illegal immigration, trespassing through private property, through town. And it's, I don't think, I never thought I would be prosecuting more people than what the county has and with the resources. But with Operation Lone Star, we're able to hire additional prosecutors, additional legal assistants. And so it's drastically changed. People, if they hear a helicopter, the kids know to run home. And if you hear a helicopter, that means there's a bailout, there's someone being pursued. You know, it's kind of like a third world nation at this point.
Right. Is there cooperation with the federal government, or just kind of abandoned you?
No, not at all. I mean, on the local level, Border Patrolmen, you know, we're all from the same community. But, you know, there's policies in place that just tie their hands. But I'd argue the Constitution ties their hands on not allowing an invasion to occur of this country, because we don't have any sovereignty anymore. I mean, anyone that thinks that we have control of our borders is delusional at this point. The cartels have control of our borders, we don't. And I think Joe Biden has failed at that part.
Do you think Secretary Mayorkas should be impeached?
Should have been impeached 2 years ago. I mean, you know, that's how somebody can remain in office and do that kind of damage to this country is mind-blowing. Yeah, he should have been impeached years ago.
Can you walk us through, you know, after someone is arrested, an illegal alien is, for criminal trespass, your office prosecutes, how long are they kept in jail? Are you able to actually get those charges to stick? What happens?
Sure. And, you know, what I'll tell you is the average of what happens. You know, they get arrested on a private property ranch that's enclosed by fences. And in Texas, you don't have to have trespassing signs. If you have a fence, that's notice of itself. It's private property. So the illegal alien will get arrested, and then he'll be taken to a processing facility, which is in Del Rio. He'll be magistrated, provided an attorney, given a health check and mental screening, and then he'll be taken to Briscoe or Segovia, which are retrofitted prisons that are brought up to jail standards, which is usually AC. That's what most of it is. And then at that point, you know, he's arraigned in court. He's notified of his charges. And, you know, if I want to make a plea deal with him, I'll give him a plea deal. He takes it, he doesn't take it, and so prosecution goes forward. At the end of the day, you know, they're prosecuted, they usually plead out, and they'll, you know, depending on the crime, depending on how many times they've been arrested, depending on their criminal history, that's what kind of determines what plea deal I gave them. Normally, I would say it's a 60-day, probably plea deal, maybe 40, it depends. And then at that point, you know, once they enter a plea of guilty, then they're released on an ICE detainer to ICE. And then once that happens, it's a black hole. I don't know what happens to them. A lot of times I know they've been removed because I've arrested them 3 times. Well, I've prosecuted them 3 times.
Sure.
But apparently the cartels, once you pay them, you get 3 chances. And after 3 chances, you have to pay again. So I've prosecuted one person 3 times, but never a 4th. So...
Interesting.
You know,
yeah.
And one thing that's also interesting is I've prosecuted one guy here, and then he was later arrested in South Texas trying to cross down there. He was trying his luck at a different county. And at the end of the day, is this, you know, securing the border? Not per se, no. But I'm trying to create a deterrent. If you want to come in legally, you don't want to come through Kinney County. You want to go somewhere else. And I think to some degree we've done that.
What other kinds of crimes are you seeing illegal aliens commit after they cross the border into your county?
It's a lot of criminal trespass and then evading law enforcement. And that begs the question is, like, at this point, when you're picked up by Border Patrol, you're given cell phones, credit cards, a flight, and yet you still trying to evade them. There has to be a very good reason why you're not wanting to turn yourself in at this point. And most of the time, there's criminal history involved. But what most people don't realize is we have no database for their criminal histories back home, where they're from. If they've committed a crime in the U.S., we know about it, but we have nothing on them from other countries.
Right. Would you say that Governor Abbott's razor wire is working as a deterrent for illegal immigration?
I would say so. You know, where it's placed at, I would say it is a deterrent, because I think illegal immigration, it all comes down to deterrence. Or, you know, most people ask me, like, well, why is immigration such an issue? Well, there's this novel concept that if you don't enforce a law, people don't follow it. So, you know, that's what it comes down to.
Right.
And so what Governor Abbott's trying to do is create enough deterrence to not solve the border crisis, but push them somewhere else where they don't want to be in Texas. And I think he's trying to do that. We just need a lot more personnel on the border and a lot more razor wire.
Do you think that the drop in crossings, at least crossings that we know about, that's happening right now will continue long term, or do you expect that there'll be an influx again?
Oh, there'll be an influx. And the question is, will the patterns remain the same? Will they be going, right now, a lot of them are going to Arizona and California. Will that stay? Because it's a longer trek, I believe, than Texas. So that's yet to be seen. I do think, though, before this presidential election, you're going to see a very high spike. And that'll be interesting to see what the governors do. Now, I used to say the governor, now the governors, which is a good thing. They're banding together. We'll see what they do to try to address it. The only thing I can address is here in Kinney County, unfortunately. So all I've got to say is that if they come into Kinney County and they break the law, they're going to get prosecuted.
You grew up in this community. It means a lot to you. You know a lot of the people here. How have you seen this community change because of the border crisis?
It's night and day. People no longer have the safety and security of their own homes. They can't go out on their property by themselves. If you do, you better be armed. The children can't just go run and play like they used to. They have to be monitored. You know, at any given moment, I'll get a text message that there's a chase going through town or someone's going through the ranches. We have, I think, over 200 law enforcement cameras in the county. And you constantly see pictures of people walking through. And what's frustrating is that we just don't have the law enforcement presence to respond. Right. We see them on camera, but we can't get to them. And that's pretty frustrating.
Right. What did just along the same lines, about what percentage of the people, the illegal aliens coming through, do you apprehend or even know about?
Oh,
is there any way
I'd say on a good day, 15 to 20%.
50.
And I think that's statewide. Most people will tell you on a good day, Border Patrol will apprehend about 20%. And that's what's staggering is if you look at their numbers of apprehensions, that's 20% probably of the total. Some people will say it's 50%. I don't see how that's possible because I see them. I know they're not apprehended, and we're barely touching them.
And you don't get involved unless somebody breaks some kind of local law, like criminally trespassing.
Right. Yeah. The only way I get involved is if there's an arrest that occurs. I've had them on my parents' own. My parents have several ranching properties in the county. I can't even get law enforcement to show up. So, like, if I can't, and it's not that they don't want to. It's just they don't have the manpower. And it's just unfortunate.
Yeah. Have there been any violent confrontations between the migrants and local people,
Yeah, there has. In fact, one thing that just blows my mind, there's been several ranch workers that are here on an H-2A visa, working visa, from Mexico, legally here working, and they were driving their pickup through the ranch, and they stopped because someone was lining the road in front of them. They thought it was, someone that needed rescuing. It was one person. He got out to see if he was okay, and then he gets jumped and beaten up by several illegal aliens from Mexico, his own people. And they beat him up, steal his truck, and take it. And so that's the border crisis wrapped up in a nutshell. It's one person here doing it legally, being beaten up by others that are here illegally.
So they basically set a trap in this case.
Yeah, it was an ambush trap, yeah.
The people that you encounter, are they mostly Mexican still, or has
For the most part, I would say probably 80% Mexican and 20% others. We rarely find anyone but adult single males. To our north, we have a port of entry in Del Rio, and then to our south, we have a port of entry in Eagle Pass. We don't have a port of entry in our 17 miles. So everyone that we encounter are the gotaways, or they're trying to evade law enforcement. I don't think, we might have had a couple give-ups, but out of like 6,000, we might have had 10. And so Kinney County is pretty well known for the gotaways that come through here.
And the gotaways tend to be people who, as you said, have good reason not to want to be.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, we have cameras, 20 miles, 30 miles north of here, and we're getting them on camera there. So that's 60 miles, 50 miles from the border. They're walking that entire distance to try to evade law enforcement. You have to really be willing to do that, to walk that far.
Now, the criminal cartels, I guess, they're moving them far away from the border, but have the cartels themselves had any impact on the safety of the community?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, each one of these drivers is hired by the cartel and the smugglers. They're hired by the cartel and they're paid by the cartel. A lot of them are illegal aliens that they come over. They can't afford to pay the cartel for the crossing, and so in return, they're going to smuggle to try to make up that money. So they're employed that way. And make no mistake, if you cross the border, you owe the cartel something.
Do you find cases of indentured servitude, or where you have, or are those people generally moved into the interior of the country?
Well, what do you mean?
Where you're going to have people working long term to pay off the cartels.
Oh yeah, they're all trying to get into the country. They're not trying to reside here. They're trying to move further into the country to cities up in the north, or Austin, Dallas, Houston, Atlanta. Whenever I prosecute them, why they're here or who they owe doesn't really come into play. Basically, criminal trespass is simple. Like, were you on the property? Yes or no. Did you have permission? Yes or no. And it's pretty much no. Mm-hmm. So what's funny though is when I first took office, the 2 cases I had for criminal trespass were U.S. citizens, and little did I know that I'd have 5,000 following that. And not all of them are illegal aliens. There's a lot of them that are U.S. citizens, and those usually involve the drivers of the smuggling vehicles. But we're seeing more and more drivers now being illegal aliens that are driving, trying to make up the money that they owe to the cartel. Mm-hmm. The problem is when everyone crosses, they owe the cartel money that they can't pay, so they have to do something for the cartels to earn it, and they're not baking cookies. They're going to commit crimes. That's what the cartel is in business for. It's all a business model. And that's why the cartel has operational control of our border, because they probably have more money than the state does.
Yeah. I mean, if the intent is to go someplace else, at some point do you sort of get the idea that, maybe I should just let this be? It's Chicago's problem or it's New York's problem? Absolutely not. If they come through Kinney County and they're breaking the law, I'm not going to give them a free pass. Yeah. Okay. And when they come through, they damage property. They make people unsafe. We're not talking about the give-ups at the port of entry. Mm-hmm. Like how many people have died or drowned walking through a port of entry bridge? 0. But they're literally in the shadow of the port of entry bridge, coming across illegally. The first act of entering our country, they're breaking our laws. Right. I have a problem with that, mm-hmm. and I think more people should. I mean, you keep hearing the president, some of his spokespeople saying that without legislation, they don't have the authority to do this. As a lawyer, as a public lawyer, what is worrisome is people will say that publicly and they expect people to believe it. To me, it's laughable that someone would say that. But what's concerning is that they have no shame in saying that. They think people will actually believe that. And if they're willing to deceive us by that statement, what else are they willing to try to deceive us on? And I think it comes back to the media with y'all to try to hold people accountable on what they say and what's true and what isn't. And it's just, people keep asking, well, when do you think the federal government will help? They're not going to. If they were going to help in the situation, they would have already done so. There's no reason for them to help now. Like how many deaths do you have to have for it to be an issue? Every day we have enough people die from fentanyl poisoning that a 747 plane goes down. Could you imagine if every day a 747 plane crashed that was owned by American Airlines? They would be hauled into court, hauled in front of Congress, and demand answers. But yet we have that many people dying for fentanyl and nothing happens. It's unbelievable. Right. Do you see a lot of the drug trafficking coming through here? We do see some. I think most of the drug traffic is in the Rio Grande Valley in the south part of Texas and in Arizona. But it's kind of hard to say, like, well, do you see a lot of drugs coming through? Well, we only get to see about 15% or catch 20% of what's coming through. So do we know there's not drugs coming through? I have no idea. We have no idea. We don't even know who's coming through. And the other concerning part is the amount of Chinese people coming over. You can't leave China without specific authorization from the government, let alone come through our border. So they're authorized to do so. Why? What's their purpose? And we're not even batting an eye. Right. Well, much like the cartels, who you're beholden to after you get here.
Right.
I would imagine that we're probably dealing with people who have family members who are, if you don't do what we tell you to do.
Right. No, so you have in that situation, you have the cartel and the Chinese government. That was a great combination. I mean, we're just sitting back allowing it, or the federal government is. That's, I'm afraid that they're going to have blood on their hands by the time, well, they already do have blood on their hands, but I think America's in trouble. We're in deep trouble.
Right. And do you, I think we sort of spoke about this a little before we went on camera, what sort of cooperation do you have between your office and, say, the U.S. Attorney or
there's not much cooperation with the U.S. Attorney's office. Occasionally they might take a case, but for the most part, the state is stuck with trying to prosecute these claims or these crimes. Unfortunately, our federal partners are just checked out right now. And so that's why the states have to come together. I really believe that the next 12 months is going to determine the next 100 years for this country. And I say that because the cases that are heading to the Supreme Court are going to be decided one way or the other for state sovereignty, state rights, because, the states have to be able to defend themselves. And that's what we're litigating against with the federal government. So depending on that, how that turns out, it's going to determine, I think, what this country is going to end up being.
When we had surges back, I guess, was it 2018 and 2019?
1,000 people.
Yeah, 1,000. Okay,
Yeah.
Which seems like nothing now.
Yeah.
How did the cooperation with the federal government at that point? What was different about the way everybody involved reacted as opposed to now?
I can't speak to that because I wasn't the prosecutor back then, but I can tell you when this crisis first began, Border Patrol approached my office and wanted to get a list of all the affidavits from landowners who wanted to prosecute for criminal trespass. So that way, whenever they apprehended someone on private property, they could turn them over to the state. That lasted for about 7 days until the higher-ups at DHS heard about it, and then that got quashed. So that kind of shows you how the lower-level Border Patrol want to help, but then once the policymakers in D.C. hear about it, they put a stop to it. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that's what we've been dealing with.
I mean, you said you grew up with a lot of the folks who are working on the front. Do you ever sort of talk to them informally about what's going on and what they're telling you?
Yeah, unfortunately, at this point, they're just doing it for the paycheck. That's all they have left. They signed up for a mission that they can't do, and the only thing left for them is a paycheck.
Brent, you're a lawyer, and I think there's been a lot of misinformation or people misunderstand the Supreme Court ruling in regards to Texas, the federal government, and the razor wire. Can you explain for our supporters what that decision means for Texas?
Yeah, basically, it was a temporary injunction against DHS that they could not cut razor wire until the pending case is resolved in the Fifth Circuit. What the Supreme Court basically said is they lifted that injunction, saying until the merits of the case are resolved by the Fifth Circuit, DHS can cut wire. It didn't say anything about state couldn't put wire up. It didn't say anything about state could prevent them from coming into state-owned property. All it said was DHS can cut wire. So, the governor's not violating the Constitution or the Supreme Court order. It's just a temporary lifting of a stay until the case is actually decided by the Fifth Circuit. Right. And I feel pretty confident the Fifth Circuit will probably rule correctly on this case. It's just the timing. I mean, I wish, it's like hurry up and wait. That's what we're kind of dealing with.
Right, yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
It doesn't have to. So they can come and cut the wire today, and Texas can go out this afternoon and put it back up.
Right. I mean, the way I kind of categorize it is, we can hand them wire cutters at the gate and say, you can cut the wire wherever you can find it at, but one, you're not allowed in here. And so wherever you can find the wire, you can cut it. Theoretically, they're allowed with the boat ramp. They can go into the water with their boats. If they wanted to, they could cut the wire from the water, standing in the boat. And then simply what would happen is the state would just replace it as soon as they cut it. So it's kind of like, well, why even cut it if it's going to be replaced by the state right after they do it? And so